You know that moment when someone says, "Just stay positive," and something inside you tightens up. Not because you want to be negative, but because you've tried the fake smile version already. You've done the everything's fine routine while your chest felt heavy and your mind kept replaying the same disappointments like a broken song. And honestly, good. That tightening is your intelligence. Your inner life is basically saying, "Don't insult me with surface-level optimism." Because pretending you're okay when you're not doesn't heal anything. It just buries the pain and calls it strength. Let's face the uncomfortable truth. Optimism without roots collapses the moment the wind hits it. If hope is built on nothing real, it turns into self-deception. And self-deception doesn't make you brave, it makes you tired. So when life keeps disappointing you, the issue usually isn't that you lack positivity. The issue is that you've been offered a cheap version of it, like trying to survive winter with a paper jacket. Looks nice, does nothing. Maybe you've noticed something else too. The more you know about the world, politics, health, relationships, money, whatever, the more complicated everything gets. More awareness can bring wisdom, but it can also show you more reasons to worry. Someone less informed might look happier, and you're sitting there thinking, "Am I broken? Or am I just seeing clearly?" And that's the trap, right? You start associating maturity with disillusionment, like growing up means losing your light, like optimism is something you're supposed to outgrow. But real optimism isn't a thought you paste onto reality. It's an emotional foundation, a whole inner atmosphere. People who carry genuine hope aren't always the ones who've had it easy. Sometimes they've carried heavier burdens than the pessimists. What's different isn't their circumstances, it's the emotional structure inside them. Friendly, patient, tolerant, not naive, just constructive. Their mind then follows along, because the mind loves to justify whatever the heart is already leaning toward. Emotions lead, thoughts rationalize. And here's where it gets personal, without being dramatic. One of the biggest enemies of real optimism is self-centeredness. Not in the "you're selfish" insult way. More like, when your mind keeps orbiting your own pain, your own story, your own disappointments, your own "why me?" That orbit becomes a prison. It changes how you relate to people. Suddenly everything feels like a rejection, a threat, a lack. Meanwhile, someone else walks into the same room, carries a lighter spirit, and somehow life opens for them. Not because life is fair, because their inner stance is different. Giving versus demanding. A person who gives what they are, grace, patience, warmth, often finds life gives back in strange ways. Almost like an old biblical line, "For whoever has, to him more will be given." Not just about money, about peace, about emotional orientation, about the kind of inner wealth you can't fake. Look back for a second, just gently, not to get stuck in nostalgia, but to remember something important. There was a time when the future looked kinda romantic. Even if life wasn't perfect, you still expected good things. You had that soft, hopeful lens. The world felt like it had promise, and yes, maybe you were more innocent. Maybe you didn't see all the cracks yet. But here's what matters. The person who felt that way didn't die. That version of you still exists somewhere inside your emotional memory, like an old room in a house you stopped walking into. However, what usually happens is slow. Disappointment doesn't show up once and ruin your life. It drips, year after year. Little betrayals, plans that didn't work, people who didn't show up, dreams that got delayed, effort that didn't get rewarded. Then one day you realize you've been living with a certain bitterness for so long. It feels like who you are, and your mind tries to call it maturity. I'm just realistic now. But realism isn't the same thing as cynicism. Maturity and disillusionment aren't married. They just get introduced a lot. Real maturity should give you a deeper capacity to appreciate, not less. It should make you more resilient than you were as a kid, not more fragile. Yet bitterness becomes a habit, and habits are sneaky. A negative mood doesn't only color the day, you start collecting evidence for it. You notice every rude person, every bad headline, every delay, every failure. Meanwhile, the good things are still there, but they don't register. because your inner camera settings are tuned to darkness. It's like walking through a garden while only taking photos of weeds. Then you go home and swear the whole place was ugly. And here's the wild part. The outside world isn't the final deciding factor in your happiness. A free country doesn't automatically make someone joyful. A harsh environment doesn't automatically make someone miserable. People carry their inner weather with them. Depending on your inner state, you build a small world around you, positive or negative overtones, and you live inside that. That's your real habitat. Two people can live in the same city, the same year, the same economy, and experience completely different realities because their interpretations are different. Over time, you prove your worldview to yourself. If you expect the bad, you'll find it, even in the best circumstances. If you're willing to look for the good, you'll find it, sometimes even in the worst. And that doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means remembering that your inner light is what reveals reality to you. The light you see comes from within. So optimism isn't a switch you flip. It's a reorientation. And reorientation is hard because habits are hard. A negative attitude can become like an addiction, not the fun kind, more like a chemical dependency on disappointment. You almost feel safer expecting life to fail you because hope feels risky. Hope is vulnerable. Cynicism feels armored, except armor gets heavy after a while, doesn't it? Now, how do you actually change without doing that weird, forced motivational thing where you suddenly declare life is amazing and then feel worse when it doesn't immediately agree with you? Because trying to repaint decades of disappointment in one afternoon doesn't work. At least, not for a reasonable person. You can't look at a world you've judged harshly for years and suddenly call it wonderful. Your whole system will reject that. The mind will call you a liar. The heart will roll its eyes, and you'll end up more discouraged. A better image comes from gardening. If the seed of happiness is inside you, and the transcript basically insists it is, then the main job isn't to force growth. Growth happens naturally when conditions allow it. In nature, plants push through cracks in concrete. Life finds a way. So if happiness isn't growing, something is choking it. Weeds, old beliefs, habitual interpretations, resentment, self-righteousness. The story you keep telling yourself about why you're stuck. Here's the tricky part. You've got to learn the difference between weeds and flowers. People mess this up all the time. They pull out their sensitivity because it hurts. They pull out their ideals because the world disappointed them. They pull out their kindness because it wasn't appreciated. Meanwhile, they leave the weeds, complaining, suspicion, contempt, standing tall. Then they wonder why the garden feels dead. No shade here. That's just a common human mistake. And something else needs to be said, because it's uncomfortable but freeing. Sometimes being good isn't actually goodness. Sometimes it's duty. Sometimes it's moral pressure. Sometimes it's a subtle attempt to justify your existence. I've earned love because I've been so helpful. And when that help isn't appreciated, you feel punished by life. You get sad, bitter, heavy. People start feeling drained around you, even if you're technically doing kind things, because the spirit behind it is too burdened. It's like giving someone a gift while sighing loudly the whole time. Eventually they don't want the gift. They just want relief from the pressure. Now compare that to the simplest, most needed service in modern life. A real smile, not the fake one. The I'm still here and I haven't surrendered my humanity kind. A person with even a small, genuine inner warmth can walk into a room and shift the atmosphere. Sometimes they don't even do much. Their inner attitude is the blessing. They don't accept a world that's different from themselves, so they stop reinforcing ugliness with their attention. They don't deny the bad, they just refuse to let the bad become their identity. So the practical move is smaller than you think. Prove one day can be better. Start there. Begin the morning differently, not with a sigh, but with a deliberate softening. A smile, even if it feels ridiculous. A choice to bring charm and courtesy into the day like you're testing a theory, not because you're pretending, because you're experimenting. And something subtle happens. Smiles come back. People respond differently, not always. there are exceptions, but often enough to give you evidence. Evidence matters. Your system needs proof, not slogans. Once you start collecting proof, momentum builds. Then you're not trying to be positive. You're watching your reality respond to a different inner posture. Optimism gets easier when you stop treating it like a personality trait and start treating it like a skill, a practice, a disciplined art. Because for a lot of people, the issue isn't one big tragedy. It's temperament habits that started early. Some kids are strong-willed and stubborn from birth. Some are introverted and self-centered right out of the gate. Those patterns can get masked by school and romance and youth until adulthood arrives and life squeezes you, and suddenly your old wiring shows up again like, "Hey, remember me?" And here's the part that sounds harsh, but actually gives you power. Blaming society doesn't fix temperament. A lot of unhappy people keep saying circumstances made them bitter, but when you really look, they were bitter long before the circumstances gave them a reason. Life just became the courtroom where their belief got proven. Human beings confirm themselves. Whatever you believe, you start building a world that reflects it. So the only way out isn't finding a new external situation. It's taking the matter into your own hands and going underneath the surface. Start with a simple observation. Too much leisure time can be dangerous when your mind is turned inward in the wrong way. Not because rest is bad, rest is sacred, but because empty time plus self-pity can turn into a dark hobby. When you have no friends, no interests, no life that pulls you outward, your mind starts chewing on itself. Self-centeredness becomes a loop, and you can't just tell someone, "Forget yourself." That's useless. The real move is adding an offsetting interest, something that splits the time you spend spiraling. Music, art, books, theater, volunteering, learning a skill, joining anything communal that gets you out of your own echo chamber. Divide the negativity, and you weaken it. Keep dividing it, and the pressure drops enough for a healthier attitude to unfold. Then comes the deeper practice, self-reflection, daily, like brushing your teeth. Not dramatic, not self-hating, more like a calm evening review. Sit down and replay the day. Where did you turn small tasks into big obstacles? How much energy went into doing the thing? And how much went into dreading it? Because sometimes the hardest part of life isn't the task itself, it's the emotional fog you build around it. You can inflate a 15-minute chore into an all-day inner war just by regretting it, resisting it, and pitying yourself about it. And that mental overlay doesn't add value, it just drains life. Ancient cultures knew this. A Greek and Eastern idea says something like, the more a person concentrates on the outer self, the less they're aware of their true self. Sounds paradoxical, but it tracks. Self-centeredness locks your attention on the noisy surface, thoughts, emotions, attitudes, imagined problems. True self-awareness is deeper, quiet, and it isn't the source of your problems. That's why meditation and concentration practices exist, not to escape life, but to form new habits intentionally instead of accidentally. You're not trying to stop thinking, you're learning to guide thinking. Give it time, and it changes you in a weirdly practical way. Within a few months of honest reflection, you start pausing before your next argument. You feel the old pattern rising, and something in you goes, wait, this is that thing again. An inhibition mechanism forms, self-knowledge begins shaping behavior, and once behavior shifts, relationships shift, your environment shifts. You begin the day with a smile, and the day gets lighter. You hold back one unnecessary sharp word, and peace shows up as a reward. Not because the universe is a vending machine, but because your inner stance is now cooperating with life instead of fighting it. Look, the world really will disappoint you sometimes. People will fail you, plans will break, effort won't always get rewarded. That part is real. But here's the quieter truth. Disappointment doesn't have to become your home address. Cynicism doesn't have to be your personality. You can stop treating optimism like an emotion you're supposed to feel and start treating it like a direction you choose. Then prove it to yourself through small daily evidence. One day at a time, one smile at a time, one honest evening review at a time. You don't need perfect circumstances to begin. You need an inner light strong enough to see the good that already exists. So start today, like someone who's done waiting to be rescued by luck. Pick one thing to cultivate: grace, patience, warmth, discipline, a real interest outside yourself, and give it sunlight. Pull one weed, one belief, one habit, one self-pity loop, and stop feeding it. Then watch what happens when your inner posture changes. Not overnight magic, something better, real reorientation, the kind that lasts. Because when optimism becomes rooted, not in denial, but in a rebuilt emotional foundation, you won't just survive a disappointing world. You'll become one of the reasons it's worth living in.